I don't remember one specific moment when I realized I was overthinking. It didn't happen on a certain day or in a particular situation. It was just there for a long time, and at some point I noticed that it didn't stop. The thoughts wouldn't slow down. They jumped from topic to topic, from question to question. And every thought felt urgent, even when there was nothing I could actually do. What if I was wrong? What if I fail? Why didn't you reply? The same questions kept repeating, over and over, with no beginning and no end. It felt like my mind had entered a loop with no exit. There was no space for quiet, not even for a moment. At first, I thought something was wrong with me. A lack of control. An inability to relax. Something broken. I looked at other people and wondered how it seemed so easy for them. How they managed to turn their minds off at the end of the day. How they didn't replay every conversation, every look, every silence. But over time, I realized it wasn't about personality, and it wasn't a weakness. It was simply what the brain does very well. It thinks, analyzes, searches for meaning, tries to understand. Sometimes to the point of overload. And when that happens, it doesn't always feel like thoughts. Sometimes it feels like pressure. Sometimes like constant inner noise. Sometimes like a heavy feeling, as if the mind is working overtime even when there's no real problem to solve. The thoughts aren't always dramatic. Sometimes they're small and ordinary. An unanswered message. A conversation that didn't come out the way I wanted. A decision I'm not sure about. But when they repeat again and again, they take up space. They drain energy. And they don't ask for permission. There were days when I felt like I wasn't fully present in what I was doing. I'd watch a show, but not really be there. Talk to someone, while my mind was somewhere else. Like my body was here, but I was stuck inside a thought I'd already visited dozens of times. And the most frustrating part was that even when I knew I didn't have an answer, I kept thinking. As if thinking itself gave me a sense of control. As if analyzing everything would prevent mistakes, pain, or disappointment. But in reality, it didn't help. It just exhausted me. At some point, I stopped trying to stop thinking. It never worked for me. Every attempt to silence my thoughts only made them louder. Instead, I started paying attention to what actually helps when I overthink. Not as a magic solution. Not as a promise of complete quiet. Just as a way to feel grounded again. One of the first things was writing. Not pretty writing. Not organized. Just getting it out. Once the thoughts are on the page, they're less stuck in my head. And sometimes I realize that half the things looping in my mind don't actually need solutions. They just need somewhere to go. Another thing that helps is setting time for my thoughts. Giving them space, but not control. A specific window where I let myself think, analyze, ask all the questions. And then I move on to the next thing. It's not perfect, but it teaches my brain that it doesn't need to stay in emergency mode all day. When the overload feels physical, not just mental, I return to my body. Breathing. Gentle movement. Walking. Something that brings me back to the present moment. It doesn't make the thoughts disappear, but it turns the volume down. I also notice that action has power. When I do something that requires focus, the thoughts weaken. Not because they're gone, but because they're no longer at the center. Over time, I also learned what doesn't help. Fighting my thoughts. Getting angry at myself for thinking too much. That only adds more pressure. Another important thing is sharing. Not always to get advice or solutions. Sometimes just saying out loud what's in my head. The simple act of being heard already lightens the load. There were moments when I thought the thoughts would never loosen their grip. When it felt like this was just how my mind worked, and always would. But slowly, almost without noticing, the intensity began to change. Not because the thoughts disappeared, but because I stopped giving each one the same weight. Some thoughts started to pass instead of staying. Some lost their urgency. And that alone made room for something else. A little more space, a little more breath. And maybe the most important thing I've learned is this. I don't need to eliminate my thoughts to be okay. I can let them be there without letting them run my life. Over time, I've gotten better at this. Not always. Not every day. But much more than before. Overthinking is part of life. It doesn't mean something is broken in us. It means the brain is working. The question isn't how to stop thinking. It's how to live, even with thoughts present, without letting them control every moment. It's a process. Not perfect, but one that slowly brings back a sense of calm. At a pace you can actually live with,